Let me ask you something, and I want you to imagine I'm sitting right next to you when I say this. Have you ever noticed how some men are respected instantly while others slowly get ignored, dismissed, or taken for granted, even though they're kind, loyal, and trying their best? And have you ever wondered why the harder some men try to please, the worse they're treated? Here's the uncomfortable truth most men are never told. It's not that you're too nice, it's that you're missing boundaries. And before this gets twisted the wrong way, let's be clear. This isn't about controlling women, playing games, or acting cold. This is about self-respect. Because in dating and relationships, how you allow people to treat you teaches them exactly how to treat you. Here's where this gets controversial. Many men believe that love is earned by sacrificing, overgiving, and constantly proving their value. But psychologically, that approach often backfires. When you show someone, early on, that you have no limits, no standards, and no consequences, they don't feel safer. They feel unchecked. And unchecked behavior almost always gets worse over time. Boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They don't push the right woman away. They protect you from becoming the man who gets walked over, drained, or quietly resented. Female psychology, when understood properly, doesn't reward neediness or self-abandonment. It responds to clarity, consistency, and emotional stability. A man who knows what he will and will not accept creates a sense of structure, and structure creates respect. Most men don't lose relationships because they set boundaries. They lose them because they set none, and then explode later when resentment builds. What you'll learn in this video are 5 boundaries men must set early, not aggressively, not arrogantly, calmly, clearly, and without apology. These boundaries aren't about dominance, they're about direction. If you've ever felt ignored, tested, or slowly devalued, this isn't about blaming anyone. It's about fixing what you can control. And what you can control is where you draw the line. 1. Your time is not automatically hers. Let me start this one in a way that might sting a little, because it's supposed to. If you drop everything the moment she texts, calls, or asks to see you, you're not showing interest. You're showing availability without value. Now imagine I'm sitting next to you and I say this quietly, almost like a warning between friends. The fastest way to lose respect is to act like your time doesn't matter. This is where a lot of men get it wrong early. They think being available equals being attractive. They think responding instantly, rearranging their schedule, and always saying yes proves effort. But psychologically, that sends a very different message. It says, I have nothing else going on. And whether people want to admit it or not, that's not appealing. Here's the controversial part. Women don't respect men who orbit around them, not because women are cruel, but because respect is built on perceived value, and value is tied to scarcity. If your time is unlimited, it feels cheap. This doesn't mean ignoring her. It doesn't mean playing games. It means you have a life, and she's invited into it, not placed at the center of it. When a man treats his time like it's important, people around him follow suit. When he treats it like it's disposable, others subconsciously do the same. Think about it. Would you respect someone who cancels plans with their friends every single time someone else calls? Or someone who always says, I'll do whatever you want, whenever you want? Probably not. You'd see them as flexible, but also weak. And weakness early on invites testing. This is why setting this boundary early matters. You don't wait until you're exhausted, resentful, or burned out. You show calmly that your time has structure. That can look like saying, I'm busy that night, but I'm free Thursday. Or, I'll call you later, I'm in the middle of something. No apology, no over-explaining, no guilt. Here's what most men don't realize. The right woman doesn't feel rejected by this. She feels secure, because a man with direction feels grounded, and grounded energy is attractive. The wrong woman, however, will push back. She'll test. She might say you're too busy, distant, or not trying hard enough. And that's the point of the boundary. It reveals who respects you and who just wants access. This boundary also protects you from emotional burnout. When you make someone your entire world too early, you give them power they didn't earn. And power without responsibility often leads to carelessness. You're not saying you're not important, you're saying my life matters too. And here's the truth men rarely hear. A woman who genuinely values you doesn't want to consume your time. She wants to share it. So if there's one rule to remember here, it's this. You decide when you're available, not your phone, not her mood, not her expectations. That's not arrogance, that's self-respect. And self-respect, more than charm, money, or looks, is what keeps a man from being walked over. 2. Disrespect isn't just her mood. Let me say this like I would if we were sitting side by side and you were telling me, she didn't mean it like that. Most men don't get disrespected overnight. They get disrespected one excuse at a time. A sharp comment here, a dismissive tone there, an eye roll, a sarcastic jab, a joke that feels a little too personal, and instead of addressing it, a lot of men tell themselves, she's just stressed. She didn't mean it. It's not worth bringing up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. What you tolerate becomes the standard. This is where things get controversial. Disrespect doesn't start big, it starts small, and when it goes unaddressed, it grows. Not because she's trying to hurt you, but because human behavior adjusts to what's allowed. Female psychology, just like male psychology, responds to feedback. When there are no consequences, behavior escalates. Now let's be very clear. This is not about snapping, raising your voice, or putting someone in their place. That's insecurity pretending to be strength. Real strength is calm, immediate clarity. If she speaks to you in a way that crosses a line, the worst thing you can do is laugh it off while feeling bothered inside. That creates internal resentment and external weakness. Here's what strong men do differently. They address disrespect the moment it happens, without emotion, without drama. Something as simple as, "Don't talk to me like that," or "I don't appreciate that tone." Then they stop talking. No lecture, no argument, no need to convince. This is where many men freeze, because they're afraid of conflict. They think speaking up will push her away. But the opposite is usually true. Respect doesn't come from silence, it comes from self-assurance. When you calmly address disrespect, one of two things happens. Either she adjusts and respect increases, or she pushes back and reveals she never respected you to begin with. Both outcomes are wins. Here's another hard truth. If you let disrespect slide early, it doesn't magically improve later. It becomes the emotional language of the relationship. And over time, that erodes attraction. Not because you're a bad man, but because attraction struggles to survive where respect is absent. This boundary also protects you from emotional confusion. When lines are clear, there's less guessing, less tension, less buildup. You're not walking on eggshells, and she's not testing how far she can go. Strong men don't demand respect. They demonstrate it through what they allow. And notice something important here. This boundary isn't aggressive. It's actually stabilizing. Most women feel safer around a man who can calmly say, "That's not okay," than around a man who absorbs everything and later explodes. Silence isn't maturity if it costs your self-respect. So remember this rule. Disrespect addressed early dies early. Disrespect ignored grows roots. You don't need to fight. You don't need to threaten. You just need to be clear. And clarity, especially early on, is one of the most powerful signals of masculine strength there is. Because the man who respects himself teaches everyone else how to treat him. 3. You don't need to explain yourself to be valid. Let's talk about something almost every man has done, even if he won't admit it out loud. That moment when you feel the need to justify every decision you make. Why you couldn't reply right away. Why you need space. Why you made a certain choice. And you keep talking, hoping that if you explain it well enough, you'll be understood and accepted. Now imagine I lean over and say this to you quietly. The more you explain yourself, the less grounded you appear. This isn't about being cold or closed off. It's about confidence. Men who trust themselves don't feel the urge to convince others that their choices are reasonable. They know they are. Here's the controversial part. Over-explaining doesn't come from kindness. It comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of conflict. Fear of losing approval. And when that fear shows up early in a relationship, it subtly shifts the dynamic. Instead of standing in your decisions, you start negotiating your right to have them. Most men don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're being respectful or considerate. But psychologically, constant explanation communicates uncertainty. It says, "I'm not fully comfortable with my own boundaries yet." Female psychology responds to emotional stability. Stability comes from clarity, and clarity doesn't require a long speech. Think about how draining it feels to explain yourself repeatedly, that mental loop where you replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much or not enough. That's not connection, that's anxiety. Strong men don't live in that loop. They understand that not everyone needs to agree with them, and more importantly, not everyone needs to fully understand them in order for their choices to be valid. When you explain yourself too much, you unintentionally hand over control. You invite debate where none is needed. You turn personal decisions into group discussions, and over time, that erodes your sense of authority, not over others, but over your own life. This boundary isn't about saying less to be mysterious. It's about saying enough and stopping. There's a deep confidence in being able to stand in silence after you've spoken. No backtracking, no filling the space, no rushing to soothe discomfort. Men who do this feel calmer, grounded, less reactive, and that energy is felt immediately. Another hard truth most men never hear. If someone loses interest because you didn't over-explain yourself, they weren't interested in you. They were interested in control or reassurance. A healthy connection doesn't require constant clarification. It grows from mutual respect and emotional maturity. You're allowed to make decisions without footnotes. You're allowed to change your mind without defending it. You're allowed to have limits without translating them into a full presentation. This boundary protects your peace. And when you stop explaining yourself excessively, something powerful happens. You start trusting yourself more. Your words carry more weight. Your presence becomes firmer because confidence isn't loud, it's concise. And the man who knows where he stands doesn't need to talk his way into being respected. He already is. 4. Your life doesn't revolve around the relationship. Let me say this calmly but directly, because some men need to hear it without sugarcoating. If your life disappears the moment you enter a relationship, that's not love. That's self-erasure. Now imagine I'm sitting next to you and I say this in a grounded, almost disappointed tone, not angry, just honest. A woman should join your life, not replace it. Here's the criticism part, and take it as a wake-up call, not an attack. Too many men abandon their routines, their goals, their friends, and their sense of direction the moment they feel chosen. They stop training, stop building, stop showing up for themselves. Everything starts orbiting around the relationship. And then they wonder why attraction fades. This isn't bad luck, it's cause and effect. When you remove everything that made you interesting, grounded, and driven, you don't become more lovable, you become dependent. And dependence creates pressure. Pressure slowly suffocates connection. Female psychology responds to men who are anchored in their own world, not obsessed, not distracted, anchored. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men avoid. If the relationship becomes the best and only thing in your life, you've already lost balance. Balance is attractive because it signals emotional stability. It says, I want you, but I don't need you to function. And that's not cold, that's healthy. Now here's the advice part. Wake up and look at your life honestly. Do you still pursue your goals with the same intensity? Do you still maintain friendships without guilt? Do you still invest time in your growth? Or does everything wait until the relationship is handled? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is information. This boundary isn't about neglecting a partner. It's about refusing to abandon yourself. A strong relationship doesn't require you to shrink your world. It requires you to bring a full one. Men who lose themselves trying to keep someone rarely keep either. There's also a quiet confidence in saying, this is who I am and this is the life I'm building. Not as a threat, not as a performance, just as a fact. And here's something important. A woman who respects you doesn't want to be your entire identity. She wants to be part of a life that's already moving forward. If she feels like your happiness depends entirely on her, that's not flattering, it's heavy. So here's the wake-up call, delivered calmly and clearly. If you wouldn't be proud of your life without the relationship, you shouldn't be building one on top of it. Maintain your routines. Protect your ambitions. Keep your sense of direction. Because when you respect your own life, others naturally respect your place in it. And the man who stands firm in who he is doesn't need to cling. He chooses. 5. Bad behavior doesn't get rewarded. Let me open this one carefully because this is where a lot of men unknowingly sabotage themselves. Picture me sitting next to you, lowering my voice a bit, saying this plainly. If you reward behavior that hurts you, confuses you, or disrespects you, You are training it to continue. Most men don't do this on purpose. They do it because they're trying to keep the peace. They think being patient, understanding, or forgiving will eventually fix things. But psychology doesn't work on intentions, it works on patterns. Here's the controversial truth: affection, attention, effort, and reassurance are rewards. When you give those things immediately after bad behavior, you send a clear message, whether you mean to or not, that the behavior is acceptable. This isn't about punishment. It's about cause and effect. A lot of men confuse emotional strength with endurance. They think being strong means absorbing everything quietly, but real strength is discernment, knowing when to step back instead of leaning in. If someone pulls away, becomes inconsistent, or crosses a line, and your response is to chase harder, explain more, or give extra affection, you're not stabilizing the connection. You're destabilizing yourself. And over time, that creates a dangerous dynamic. One person learns they can act however they want, and the other keeps compensating. Female psychology responds to emotional consistency. When your reactions are predictable, especially when they're driven by fear of loss, you lose leverage. Not power over her, but power over the situation. This boundary is about restraint. Sometimes the strongest move a man can make is to do less. Less talking, less chasing, less emotional labor. That doesn't mean shutting down. It means not over-investing when the behavior doesn't match the standard. Here's what many men don't realize until it's too late. When you stop rewarding poor behavior, one of two things happens. Either the behavior corrects itself, or the person reveals they were only comfortable when there were no consequences. Both outcomes protect you. This boundary also preserves your self-respect. Nothing erodes confidence faster than giving your best to someone who's giving you confusion in return. Over time, that imbalance eats away at you quietly. Healthy connections are reciprocal. Effort is met with effort. Respect is met with respect. When you reward bad behavior, you break that balance. And here's something important. This boundary must be calm. No lectures, no ultimatums, no emotional reactions, just alignment between what you tolerate and what you give. Men who master this don't become cold. They become steady. And steadiness is powerful. So remember this rule, because it changes everything. Your attention is valuable. Give it where it's respected, not where it's tested. You don't need to prove your worth by overgiving. You prove it by knowing when to step back. And a man who can walk away from what doesn't serve him doesn't need to beg for better treatment. He naturally receives it. That's not manipulation. That's maturity. And maturity is what separates the man who gets walked over from the man who gets respected. Let me end this with a statement that's going to make some people uncomfortable, but if you're still listening, it's probably meant for you. Most men don't get walked over because of women. They get walked over because they never decided who they were willing to be. That's the part no one wants to say out loud. It's easier to blame dating culture. It's easier to say things have changed, or that effort doesn't matter anymore. But the truth is, effort without boundaries turns into self-betrayal. And when you betray yourself long enough, people around you eventually follow your lead. Here's the real controversy. If a relationship only works when you overgive, over-explain, over-accommodate, and tolerate things that drain you, it's not a relationship. It's a slow negotiation of your self-respect. This isn't about becoming colder. It's about becoming clearer. The men who apply what you've just heard don't suddenly lose good women. They lose chaos. They lose confusion. They lose situations that were never aligned to begin with. And yes, that can feel lonely at first. But loneliness with self-respect is temporary. Resentment in a relationship lasts much longer. If any part of this hit a nerve, that's not an accident. That's recognition. Growth usually starts there. I want you to do something simple but powerful. Comment your experience. Where did you fail to set a boundary? Where did you ignore your gut? Or where did setting one change everything for you? I read the comments, and when I see patterns, I reach out. Because this isn't just content, it's a conversation. You're not alone in this, even if it's felt that way before. The goal isn't to win relationships. The goal is to stop losing yourself inside them. Because the moment you choose self-respect over approval, everything else starts to fall into place. And that decision, quiet, firm, and unapologetic, is where real strength begins.